Donald Trump made a triumphant return to the White House as president-elect on Wednesday.
Trump met incumbent President Joe Biden on his invitation, beginning the customary transfer of power process. "Welcome back," said the 81-year-old Biden, as he congratulated the 78-year-old Trump, the man he has repeatedly branded as a danger to democracy.
Trump thanked President Biden for pledging a smooth transfer of power. Now, this comes just days after the Republicans secured with a sweeping mandate as 47th elected president of the United States.
Mr. President-elect and former president is dying. Congratulations. Thank you. Looking forward to having, like they said, a smooth transition. Do everything we can to make sure you're accommodated, what you need. We're going to get a chance to talk about some of that today. So, welcome back.
Jim, thank you very much. And politics is tough, and it's in many cases not a very nice world, but it is a nice world today, and I appreciate very much a transition that's so smooth. It'll be as smooth as it can get, and I very much appreciate that, Jim.
Meanwhile, in the U.S. Capitol, both chambers, the Senate and the House of Representatives, held their first session after the elections. Republicans were declared the majority party in the House of Representatives to give Trump the complete control of Congress. The Republican Party also gained majority in the Senate.
The Republicans in the U.S. Senate also picked a new leader. South Dakota's John Thune finished ahead of John Cornyn of Texas in a runoff to replace outgoing party leader Mitch McConnell. Florida's Rick Scott, who was seen as most aligned with Trump, did not make it to the runoff.
Trump continued to name members of for his second administration. Hours after meeting Biden, Trump named right-wing Florida lawmaker Matt Gaetz as his attorney general. Gaetz has been a staunch ally who has defended Trump in his court battles and impeachment fights.
Now, Trump also named former Democratic Congresswoman Tulsi Gabbard, who has opposed U.S. support for Ukraine and met Syria's President Bashar al-Assad, as his incoming director of national intelligence. Trump also confirmed the nomination of Marco Rubio as Secretary of State.
And well, for more on this, our correspondent Susan Tehrani sent us this report from New York on Trump's meet with incumbent President Joe Biden and also on the nomination of Matt Gaetz. Take a listen.
Matt Gaetz's nomination for Attorney General signals a significant overhaul at the Justice Department, one that's aligned with President-elect Donald Trump's vision. Gaetz is a loyal Trump ally and has vowed to end the weaponization of government and restore faith in the Justice Department. However, his nomination does raise concern among some senators, wondering if he's suitable for this role given past investigations against him. As for Gabbard, well, she will oversee the U.S. intelligence community influencing policy decisions. Her stance on Russia's security concerns and opposition to U.S. military intervention may shape her approach to intelligence gathering and national security strategy as well. She did meet with Syrian President Bashar al-Assad before. Remember, she used to be a Democrat before aligning with President-elect Donald Trump. These issues will come up in her confirmation hearing for sure. Senator John Thune's election as Senate Majority Leader gives him a substantial influence over Donald Trump's agenda. Thune will control Senate's schedule and oversee confirmation cabinet members, also 1,200 high-level government jobs, as well as judicial nominations as well. Now, this position also allows him to shape the legislative landscape, potentially balancing Donald Trump's ambitions with more moderate Republican interests. Remember, Thune's victory, despite Trump allies backing Rick Scott, suggests a degree of independence within the Republican Party, one that perhaps is more moderate than what many call the MAGA movement.
All right, to discuss more, we are now being joined by Garland Nixon from Maryland. He's a political analyst and a radio show host. Welcome to World DNA, Mr. Nixon.
Thank you for inviting me.
Now, lots happening in the United States of America. First up, let's talk about that meet between U.S. President-elect Donald Trump and the incumbent Joe Biden. A first meeting between Trump and Biden since 2020. We saw the handshake between both the leaders, with Biden pledging for a peaceful transition, something which did not happen in 2020. Your analysis, what kind of a message does this send out, not just to the Americans, but to the entire world?
Well, I think a couple of things in that. Number one, you have to understand that this meeting is customary, and it's pretty much kind of ceremonial and performative in the meeting. Joe Biden, as we can understand it, as we can glean from reports, talked to President-elect Trump about the Ukrainian conflict. Certainly, we know that President Trump has alternate perspectives on that. So I think it was a performative. I think it was a ceremonial meeting. And I think at a time after a very difficult period, I think it did show some level of civility, particularly, after we had a trying election where, Donald Trump was called a fascist and all kinds of names like that. I think it was good for the country to turn the volume down on that a bit. So I think it was a good meeting.
Right. Now let's also talk about, how the Congress, the government looks now. We know that it looks like the Republicans will now have control over all the power positions in the national government in the U.S. How do you think it will look like?
Couple of things. I think you mentioned the Tulsi Gabbard appointment as Director of National Intelligence. That is an extremely powerful position. For those who don't understand how the levers of power in the executive branch work, the Director of the CIA will now report to Tulsi Gabbard, and she's the person who will have Donald Trump's ear on a everyday basis on international intelligence. So that's one of the most powerful positions in government that people don't know about. I personally think it was a good choice. She seems to be a fairly moderate person when it comes to military interventions around the world. One might say even quite cautious. And based on what's been happening in the U.S. the last few years, that's probably a good move. Additionally, I don't think the names are as important right now, who is in charge of the Senate, or which person is in charge of the Senate or the House. For this reason, Donald Trump got over 300 electoral college votes. I believe it was 312. It was such a blowout right now that it will be hard for either of the two houses, the upper or the lower house, to resist any of his inclinations. If he says he wants a person to get pushed through, or if he wants a policy or a law to get through, he has so much power right now because he got so much of the vote. He won basically in every sphere of what some call democracy here. There are others who aren't as sure. But whatever the case, he's got a lot of power and political capital. And if he says he wants it to happen, either John Thune or whoever is running the House is not going to be able to say no at this point for some period of time.
Right, Mr. Nixon, you do speak of what's happening in the Senate. I also want to talk about Trump's cabinet picks. He has picked up Matt Gaetz as the U.S. Attorney General. Your analysis of that appointment, because he does face an uphill battle as he awaits the Senate confirmation.
Certainly, Matt Gaetz has been a controversial figure in that he has gone against some of the mainstream consensus positions on things such as COVID, and particularly he was critical of the attacks on Donald Trump, where he was accused to be, a Russian agent, things of that nature. So the system will push back pretty hard against Matt Gaetz. I think it just depends on how bad Donald Trump wants him. He has so much political capital right now. If he chooses to spend some of that political capital on Matt Gaetz, he can push Matt Gaetz through. I do believe that he will do that, particularly because I believe he's probably going to want Matt Gaetz to look into some of the actions that was the legal and political actions that were taken against him that he feels are unfair. And so I think he's going to put all the horsepower he has behind Matt Gaetz, and I don't see how the Senate can stop him at this point. He got votes from people who don't even vote for Republicans. So I don't see how they can stop this.
Right. Now, what we're looking at is domestic policy. Can we also have your perspective on what does a foreign policy look like? You mentioned Tulsi Gabbard, and we know that she has questioned again and again the U.S. credibility of U.S. intelligence. How does the foreign policy look like now that we know the two wars exist, the Ukraine-Russia war and West Asia?
Well, certainly Donald Trump has people. He's made it clear, and as I said, even the people who were very hawkish about the Ukraine conflict, I think they understand they're coming under Donald Trump's umbrella of power, and they're going to have to disengage from the Ukraine conflict. I look at that happen. I do think the Middle East is very dangerous right now. The most dangerous time probably is between now and January 20th. I think people who are in the Middle East who want something extreme to happen may see this period of time when they can take their action before Donald Trump comes in. He does have a lot of people in his cabinet who are Iran hawks, as they say, who are anti-Iran. So, but Donald Trump has pledged to end the conflicts that were started under the Biden administration. So at this point, the people that he has designated for the positions don't necessarily align with the rhetoric that he used while he was running. So a lot of the supporters, the MAGA, as they call them, the Make America Great Again supporters of Donald Trump, were very, very upset and angry about some of his selections. I think the choice of Matt Gaetz and Tulsi Gabbard has somewhat subdued their anger, maybe not completely. But again, it's going to be hard to tell with Donald Trump. You can't tell based on what Donald Trump says what he's necessarily going to do.
Right, interesting. Thank you so much for joining us and giving your perspective. That was Garland Nixon from Maryland. He is a political analyst and Read a Show host. Thank you so much.
Thank you.